Hi everybody, Stephen Roselle here, Senior Technical Specialist, my guy at Autodesk, and this is part 2 of a demo series I'm creating to cover the time editor, starting with the basics and also getting into some more advanced examples of how you can blend different animations together. So in the first demo, we talked about how to create clips and then how to edit those clips at a higher level and then combine them together with groups of clips and groups of clips in order to create more complex animations. So we started with a really simple one wave, and then we combined this together to create a lot of different waving motions and varying the time over the course of the animation. So what we're going to do now is talk about what's actually happening here under the hood. So what you see is basically a series of clips that are blended together, and then those are grouped, and then those groups are blended together with another series of clips. And then all of those groups are composited into a single high-level group. So you can create these stacks of hierarchies that allow you to do higher-level edits like scaling and cycling and whatnot. But what's really going on under here is that all of this is pointing to the same animation. So in the first demo, I talked about how you can take one animation and create a clip out of it. Well, everything that's been done here is basically considered kind of like a non-destructive edit on top of that original source animation. So all these clips and all these groups are just non-destructive edits. I can actually go in here and I can just delete them completely by selecting and hitting the delete key, and that removes all of the animation. But I haven't destroyed the original animation. The original animation is still in my scene, and it's in the outliner under a section here that says Time Editor and then Sources. So basically, everything that I did there was relative to the original source animation, which is stored in my scene. So when I created that clip, it also created a source, which is basically driving the clip. So if I delete everything that I've done, I can actually take that source and I can just drag that into my scene. And now I have the original animation back. So now when I play this back, you can see that I have the original kind of non-modified version of that animation. So what happens when you create a copy, for instance, let's say I Control-C, Control-V to create a copy, and I'll explain the color differences here in a minute. But if I Control-C and Control-V and create a copy, what I'm going to end up with is two instances of that clip. Now the instances are actually exactly the same, and we can illustrate this by going into the graph editor. So basically, the clips themselves are higher level kind of wrappers around some underlying curves. If I were to go into the graph editor and take a look with the clip selected, I will see the contents of that clip. So there's clip 1. If I select clip 2 here and go to the graph editor, you can see it's offset in time, and there's clip 2. If you go to the time editor and you select the track itself as opposed to an individual clip, then you can see both of those in the time editor. So now you can see I have clip 1 and I have clip 2. They look exactly the same. If I change anything, for instance, if I offset the time of one of these clips, grab the track, go back to the graph editor, now you can see that that offset is applied to the curves at a high level. But the curves themselves are the same. So let's actually undo that last step, and let's get back to where they're kind of side by side, and we'll talk about editing the curves. Now, when you go into the time editor, you can actually expand a kind of representation of the keys. You see this almost in dope sheet form. So if you click on this little arrow, you can expand that and you can see, okay, well, I have keys here and I have keys here. But you can't actually edit these directly, not on the clips themselves anyway. But if you select the track or the clip and you go to the graph editor, you can actually access these keys at the source level. And what you'll notice is if I grab keys from the first clip, it will also select the keys in the second clip. And if I make some changes, for instance, to the timing, let's just offset the peak of the wave there at the beginning, and now you can see that that actually affected both of the clips. So when I play this back, you can see that it sped it up in the beginning, slowed it down at the end, and it has the same exact effect on both clips. Likewise, if I grab the keys in the second clip, which are here, and I offset those, then that's also going to offset the keys in the first clip, and that's because they are instances of that first clip. So now you can see I've accelerated the back kind of wave motion. Now, if you want these to be unique, let's just undo those two edits that I did. If you want these to be unique, there is a simple way of doing that. If you go back into the time editor, you can see that the naming of these clips is italicized. If I were to go in and select the clip, right-click, and make animation source unique, watch what happens not only in the time editor, but also in the outliner. Now you can see I have anim clip 1 source, anim clip 1 source. These are just basically copies now of one another. And you can see that anytime you see the non-italicized version, that indicates that it is a copy and not an instance of a source animation. So now if I go to the graph editor, and actually let's just make sure I grab the track. Now you can see I see both of the clips side by side, the keys rather. I can take one clip, whoops, actually I have the source selected here. You actually want to not select the source in the outliner or you'll get a duplicate selection there. So I want to grab the track, I'll go to the graph editor, and now I can grab the keys for the second clip, offset them that way. I can grab the keys for the first clip, offset them that way, and now you can see I've decelerated that first motion, accelerated, and then accelerated and decelerated with the second wave. So anytime you're working, you can always get back to the original source animation. Now, if you edit the keys at the key level, it does alter the source animation. So now if I were to delete these and then bring them back in, and let's just name these something a little more appropriately. Let's just call this wave fast, and we'll call this wave slow. Now, if I drag wave fast in, what you can see is that this is the one where it slows down at the beginning and then it accelerates at the end. And then this was the one, if I play it back, that accelerated at the beginning and slowed down at the end. So if you do select a clip and you go to the graph editor and you do make edits, it does actually edit that source. But if you do higher level edits like scaling or like cycling, so for instance, if I were to go in here and scale this and make it really, really slow at a high level, that does not affect the underlying keys. That is basically a non-destructive edit. So you can see there I've slowed the animation way down. I could take this now, delete it, bring it back in, and I have the clip in its original form based on that source animation. So it's something to be aware of while you're working with all of these clips and keys. It can be confusing when you're trying to figure out what's represented in keyframe world and what's represented at the higher level kind of clip time editor world. But hopefully that makes things a little more clear. In the next example, we're going to talk about compositing clips together and exporting them into separate files so that you can repurpose them.